this talk, Dr. Ram will share with you 5 ways to apply the precognition to take the guesswork out and accelerate possibilities to rapidly achieve your goals. So Dr. Kaushik Ram brings together a decade of study into the optimal performance of the body and brain. His career-defining discovery shows you how to biologically unlock the intelligence of the heart using the precognition method. He has been featured in multi-award-winning documentaries, and the precognition method has been applied in corporate leadership programs to thrive in the era of rapid change, complexity, and ambiguity. He is the best-selling author of Hidden World, the inside story of the soul. So just welcoming Dr. Kaushik Ram to the virtual stage. Welcome.
Hey, Nicholas.
How are you today?
Wonderful, wonderful, and absolutely extraordinary to be here with you.
Thank you so much. We're very excited to hear what you have to share because, you know, you really are a scientist and there's a lot of that has been your trajectory and your path, and quite a few of the speakers has probably been more on the spiritual angle of things, and you'll be coming more from the other side, but showing us how spirituality and science really do meet. So over to you, Dr. Ram.
Wonderful. So thanks so much for having me on this program, and absolutely delighted to share some of the work that I've been doing over the last 15 years. And I do come at it at a certain angle, which is science, but I would like to take a little step back and just show you why this work is so important to me. And it's not related to science, it's actually related to an experience that I had in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. And I've shared that experience, which was a near-death experience, on Karen's YouTube channel. So it's well documented there. So if you want to have a peek into that, then that's where you can find it. But we have only 30 minutes, so I'm going to cover some of the science behind what I talk about. So one of the things that happened was when I was up in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, I had a near-death experience. But when I came back from that experience, people did not believe what I had to say. In fact, I found it very difficult to communicate to people what a near-death experience was. And that left me at a very critical turning point in my life. I could have gone down, I guess, the spiritual path at that point, going, academia is, doesn't understand who I am, and I'd rather, be with people who do. But at that point, I made the choice to actually understand what happened to me. And in this photo, I'm only 23 years old, up in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, with a tribe. We've just come out of hunting a wild boar, and a lot of my understanding about the world and how it works comes from tribal knowledge. This was in Papua New Guinea. I've also been with tribes in the Kalahari Desert in Africa. I've been into the Amazon and really tried to understand the mechanics of nature. And in this particular experience, I had a choice going, do I continue on the path of science and develop a language with which I can share, and then finally people would understand me, or I could completely dismiss science and create a different path. So I did choose the former, which was choose science. And luckily now I'm at a point in my life where I can explain a lot of the things that happened to me, and I can even help people into that journey as well. So that's a little bit of a backstory. But since that experience, I've gone on to write a book, Living Inside a Cave in Thailand. And, these are experiences that you can't actually create out of planning. I never planned to write a book in a cave. You can't go on Airbnb and just find a cave and go, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. These things happen because you make a decision. And once you make that decision, certain things start to happen in an accelerated rate that allow this, expression to come through. And not only was this book published and came out as A Hidden World, but also someone read the book, and it then turned into a music video called Equation of Love. And again, you can't really plan these things. These things just happen. And I guess the only way I can capture what was happening is through a quote that Paulo Coelho once said, and it is, when you surrender to your heart, your path begins to travel towards you and greet you in your every step. And this is what I was feeling was happening to me. As long as I was dedicated to my heart, all these miraculous things would happen. I mean, I'm a scientist. I'm not a musician. I don't do music videos. But the fact that these things simply happen at such an accelerated rate kept blowing my mind. And so with my mind, I guess I started to think, how do you actually create these experiences? And eventually I came up with the precognition method, which is aligning your internal physiology to the point where you're able to preconceive the moment. And this is, in a way, a form of hyper-alignment, where your internal state is so tuned into what is happening around you that you're able to pick up on random things, and they lead to incredible events. So when I was designing this, I also needed a way to explain this to people in a very, I guess, easily accessible way. And so I came up with a framework called the Precognition Method. And this is quite, I guess, a diverse way of looking at it, but we only have 30 minutes. So I'll cover it just using 3 elements, which is brain, body, and behavior. And as a neuroscientist, I've invested more than a decade looking at just the brain itself. So that's where we'll start. And I would like to share with you guys an incredible video that was created by the Adam Ghazali Lab in the University of San Francisco. And this video is really remarkable because it combines 3 different imaging modalities. One is structural MRI, another one is diffusion tensor imaging, and then we've got EEG, which maps surface brain activity and puts it into alpha, beta, and gamma states. So all of those different imaging techniques are overlaid onto one brain image, and this is what you see. So in this video, what you see is the human brain mapped according to gray matter and white matter. Gray matter here is translucent. White matter is in orange. And what you see as spikes in activity is color-coded, so red for alpha, blue for beta, and green for gamma. And what you see is that we don't use all of our brain all the time, but there's certain neural networks that communicate with each other. You can see at the moment there's more hemispheric dominance in the left hemisphere. And as we turn around, you can really see the intricate detail to which current science is able to map the human brain. And this knowledge, I guess, wasn't available to us a decade ago, but technology has advanced so much that we can now have a look inside our own brains. And I really do want to actually take a moment to share a sense of appreciation for how far science has come, because sometimes we forget how many incredible advancements have actually come from science. So on the right here, you actually see a picture of an MRI, and this MRI is of my own brain. And the way the medical system actually works is we have to negotiate between clinical patients and research studies to be able to even get access to an MRI. So if there's someone coming from the emergency department, they've had a car accident, for example, they will always take priority over MRIs. So we have to kind of negotiate with hospitals in order to get MRIs for research studies. And then once we acquire an MRI, how do you translate a grayscale image that you see on the left into a more informative image that you see on the right? That is, the amount of data in both these images are exactly the same, but one is more refined. So what we actually did in this case was there's only two tissue types in the brain. One is gray matter and one is white matter. And so if you're looking at a grayscale image, what you can do is just track the direction of information flow in the white matter. And that's what you see in the box on the right. And you can see there's a red line actually tracking the white matter in the direction of information flow. So the way we do this is through incredible computational power. We look at every single pixel in the MRI, and then we calculate using statistics which direction is the fiber likely to move. And then we do it over iterations, in this case, 10,000 iterations per fiber. And eventually we get an idea of where the white matter is moving. And so the white matter is actually what you saw in orange in the previous image. So I actually did some of this for my PhD, and we'll have a look at some of the results. So over here, you can see a brain mapped with genetics. And in this case, epigenetic changes that happen over times as you age, decade by decade, there is genetic information that is being transmitted through the environment. And this is what we call horizontal transmission of genetic information. Vertical transmission is from parent to child. So this information is so incredible because now you can see that we're not just transferring our genes to our future generations, we're actually transferring our environment, and that has an impact on genetic expression. So things like trauma may be held by a culture, but also trauma is passed on by the environment a culture passes on to the younger generation. So it's a very, I guess, intricate way of looking at how much our brain is changing through not just our genetics, but the environmental influence on our genetics. So just to do this study, it took me about an year to gather 256 patients, and it took about 1 month to do all the calculations to be able to generate an image like this. Now, though, we're able to do this in milliseconds using AI, and AI is able to not just do this for one brain, but thousands of brains at a time. So the technology has advanced by magnitude since I did this research. So that's the pace and the scale at which brain research is moving. So I didn't just stick to the lab. As a neuroscientist, I was actually internally conflicted because I did have a spiritual understanding, and sometimes all the incredible things that I could do, I wasn't able to do while I was inside a research lab. And so I did take this outside the research lab as well. And what you see here is actually a EEG map on my own brain. And we did this study with another company called the About My Brain Institute. And we were looking at what happens to our brain when we're stressed. And then we applied some of the stress management rules that we have. And then we saw what the brain is doing when under stress, but through tools that are able to calm the nervous system down. So if you look at the image on the right, if you just look at the first column, you'll see that all the brains have a blue color. And on the heat map, it shows that blue is low alpha activity, and alpha brainwaves are there when your brain is calm and relaxed. And in this case, there's no alpha under stress. So every single subject, subject 10, 11, and 13, all had low alpha activity when they're stressed. And then we put them through the training program, which is my Training Nervous System program, which teaches them a breathing technique to calm down the nervous system. And then we introduced them to stress again. So in the next column, what you see is the brain produces more alpha, which is red activity in the brain while under stress. So this was quite remarkable. How do you actually stay in a meditative state while under stress? So this research was really exciting me. And so now that we know that we can translate some of the clinical information of stress management and really map it, not just in patients, but for everyone to be able to benefit from brain research like this, I wanted to know ways that we could do it, which was very utilitarian, which was simple, which was effective, and really didn't need much background information. You could simply do it, especially in moments that you need it the most, and that is when you are actually stressed. So that took me to the next step of the precognition method, which was understanding the body. And this is perhaps where majority of my research work comes from. I do have a very deep understanding of neural networks and how the brain is connected, but how do you improve brain performance actually wasn't through the brain, it was actually through the body. And why this is the case, we'll explore this in the next segment. So how do you rewire your brain? One of the analogies that I like to use is looking at the brain as a metaphor of a tree. So if you think about the two hemispheres of the brain, those are the left hemisphere and right hemisphere, and it has a very branching structure. You saw in the orange fibers that were sort of navigating their way through the brain. That sort of branching structure is similar to the branches of a tree. The brain also has a stem, and it's called the brain stem, and it's like the trunk of a tree. And the trunk actually descends down and has a root structure as well. And the root structure of the body is the spinal cord. And if you can think about it, if you don't nurture the soil, you cannot expect the branches to flourish. So how do you nurture the soil? And what blew my mind when I got to this point was the heart is actually the governing structure of the body. And through the heart, that dictates every other level of information that is traveling in your body, how your organ systems interact with each other, or what you even prioritize in your decisions. So the heart is in fact your first perception of reality. And this gives rise to the moment-to-moment changes in your heart. And we call this heart rate variability. And so anything that is happening around you will inevitably change your heart rate. And the moment that the heart rate changes, how the body processes metabolic energy, how your brain processes decisions change instantly. So the moment you go into fight or flight, that has a very different thought structure to when you're calm and relaxed, and your thought structure is entirely different in that state. So this was one of the most remarkable discoveries in my area of research. So this also informed the fact of how I work with people as well, because often when I was working with people, they weren't really telling me the truth, and I could often see right through them. But if I tried to tell them the truth, they would put up a defensive front, or it would often take them a long time to really understand what I was saying. So I could see that, a lot of what people tell me is often exaggerated or half-truths. And you can easily see this in, say, dating apps, for example. If you look at the height of men on dating apps is far above the average of the height in a normal population. So people often lie about, what they're actually feeling, or what the actual height is. So I didn't want to work with what people tell me. The best way I could work with them was directly with their body, because what the physiology is often telling cannot be manipulated. So the body does not lie, basically. And so the best way to look at the body was looking at the heart rate. So one of the ways that I tested this was I elevated my heart rate, and then I tested how long it took my heart rate to recover back to baseline. And in this example, my heart rate rose to about 75 beats per minute, and without doing anything at all, no meditation, nothing, just simply reflecting upon my life, my heart rate dropped to 59 beats per minute without doing anything. It took about 3.5 minutes to do that. The next thing I did was actually tried mindfulness-based meditation. And this time, not only did my heart rate take longer to come back to baseline, but it didn't drop down to 69 beats per minute. 59 beats per minute. It was actually 10 BPM higher. And so this was with a meditation practice, which was surprising. Then I tried a breathing practice, and this time, again, very similar results. My heart rate did drop a little bit quicker, but it still only reached 69 beats per minute, given that I was doing some form of meditation practice. And in all these cases, the heart rate comes down and then gradually rises as well. And because I've been looking at this, and you can probably tell by now that I'm absolutely obsessed about, optimizing brain health, body health, and performance. So I have developed my own tools and techniques. And one of these was the vagal breathing meditation. So I tried that, and this provided the fastest drop in your heart rate. Within 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, the heart rate dropped to 63 beats per minute. And then it actually stayed there. So it remained around 69 beats per minute through the entire length of the meditation. So this was quite remarkable. But what was most profound was not only your resting heart rate, what happens when you look at your heart rate variability. So mindfulness and the 21 breath meditation both had very similar results in heart rate variability. And it was quite similar to no meditation at all. But when I used the vagal breathing meditation, the heart rate variability decayed very quickly and remained low throughout the duration of the meditation. So this was one of the ways of testing different techniques and seeing how effective they are. Because when it comes to something as serious as trauma, for example, when I work with people who are in a state of trauma, their ability to work with verbal information has gone out of the door. Their rational thinking, their cognitive faculties have kind of gone out of the window. So you can't actually tell them things. Instead, you want something that works directly with the body, calms them down very simply and effectively, and then that opens the opportunity to communicate with them verbally. And so in extreme cases, you want something that is quick, simple, and effective. And it just comes down to that, because often meditation does work very well in a candlelit room with the perfect music and the right tribe. And that is, an ideal environment. But real life and ideal environments often don't exist together. So, I really wanted a utilitarian approach, something that works regardless of what is happening externally. So then the third element of the precognition method is behavior. And behavior change is very, very difficult, in fact. So one of the ways that I work with behavior change is actually changing the state of a person. And that is quite easy to do because our internal state is only one of two choices. One is fight or flight, and the other is rest and restorative. And so this means that as long as I can put a person into a state which is safe, their behavior starts to radically change because of that state. So instead of going into how how you do all of these complex things, I'd actually want to summarize the whole talk by just talking about some of the benefits of being in this state. And this I called the anatomy of love because, as I mentioned before, the heart perceives reality before anything else does. And if you can learn ways to modulate your heart rate, especially in real time, then the moment-to-moment experiences that you have changes radically as well. You're not reacting to things out of fear anymore. You're simply responding to them. And because your heart rate is low, doesn't matter how chaotic the environment around you is, you have all the time in the world to make an informed decision rather than a panic decision, which often happens in the state of fight or flight. So this is where I say, precognition is happening before the brain. It is precognition. So that's where the terminology comes from. So let's have a look at some of the behaviors that are a product of this state. So this diagram actually comes from Dr. Stephen Forges, who is one of the founders of polyvagal theory. And I do credit people for the remarkable work that they have done, which has actually done an enormous amount to progress my own area of research as well. So one of the things that happens is when you bring the nervous system into a state of safety, into a state of security, is that all the organ systems start to work in harmony. They work synergistically together. And that happens in the brain as well. And when it happens in the brain, that happens in the gamma bandwidth, and it's called gamma binding because suddenly all the neural networks are working synergistically together. So you don't have conflicts between rationality and emotion. You don't have an internal conflict anymore. Everything is working beautifully. So duality dissolves. You don't have a conflict between heart and brain. Another thing that happens is surrender. Surrender as a concept is incredible But I really wanted to show people how easy it is to surrender through the nervous system as well, because one of the things that I do is use stress inoculation exercises. So I teach a person what it feels like to be safe, and then I introduce stress, and they're able to maintain that state of surrender despite the stress. And this then teaches the nervous system how to remain in that state despite what is going on around externally. And this is a very powerful state to be in. Thirdly, courage. Courage is taking action, especially when it's needed the most. And take, for example, if a talent freeze happens when someone actually is confronted with something that threatens them. So, for example, if you want to have a conversation with your boss, but you are terrified by speaking with your boss, when you do enter the room, the way the boss stares you down sometimes almost puts you into a state of freeze, and your skills are suddenly gone out of the window. So in these moments, it takes courage. So when you teach people how it is like to feel safe despite the fact that there's a threat, that leads to courageous action. And this is really, really powerful to be able to stand up for yourself, to be able to say no, and to actually even believe in yourself. So these are really, really important things that happen through an internal state of safety. Another thing that is really remarkable is that when your nervous system is restored to a state of harmony, a lot of the hormonal balances change as well. So there's more oxytocin in the system, there's more endorphins in the system. And if you can think about someone who is depressed, they're deprived of oxytocin, they're deprived of and I don't put oxytocin in the same class as serotonin and dopamine, which are neurotransmitters. They're short latency. They were never meant to last. Similar to our heart rate, it's always changing. Oxytocin, on the other hand, is a neuromodulator. It's long lasting. It creates this sense of love within a person. And when someone is depressed and deprived of oxytocin, what happens is they lose trust. They don't feel like reaching out to people. They close themselves up. So they're less likely to have an openness to receive. So when you put the nervous system into a calm and relaxed state, it really means that they feel safe and they're open to receiving. And more importantly, they're open to ask for help, because now there's connection, there's trust, and they feel safe around people. And lastly, and perhaps one of the most important ones, is it allows you to set boundaries, because now you're in a state of safety. A lot of manipulative behaviors start to dissolve. You're not looking to please other people, or you're not trying to get something from anyone. In fact, you are in your own autonomy. And so these are some of the behavioral changes that happen. And so just to bring it back, when I was in the highlands of Papua New Guinea at the age of 23, I really didn't know much about neuroscience. I was only, I was young and foolish, basically. And I just simply knew that I needed to take a step in the right direction, follow my heart, and see where it leads me. And it's allowed me to actually research all these beautiful fields and share it in meaningful ways with hundreds of people and thousands across the world as well. So I simply want to leave with the idea that love has never been a mistake, because once you are in this internal state of love, you literally can't go wrong. So thank you for listening, and over to you, Nicholas.
Thanks, Dr. Ram.